Do you want to use the microphone here?
Yeah, well, okay. Is it necessary? Okay. All right. One where you're wrong and one where you understate your position. I believe that the empire does not benefit the empire building economically. That the Romans left England because it was too expensive and England became poor. Africa and the European colonies. The other is the opportunity cost of military bases might be very great. It's on average, a base closes, employment goes up. You make a correction of how many of the employees on the base were military dependents, it will be more so. And although we handled Tejan poorly, I'll bet we will find, we may well find that employment has gone up in Tejan. So look at opportunity cost. You know the expression, even though you don't think in those terms.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Oh, I can leave a copy of the speech with Dr. Underwood if anybody's interested. And we are, of course, recording this tonight. We'll post it on our UOG website, www.uog.edu, in case you want to watch it again or tell your friends about it. It might take us a day or so to do that. Does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask? Okay. I think it takes me longer to walk than it does to ask the actual question.
Guam does not have the kind of data that needs to be generated in order to have meaningful participation in the EIS. We have an EIS draft that's coming down the pipeline at this point in time. How have the other communities been able to handle this problem? And what you were talking earlier about legal implications, and what can we do about this if an EIS were to come to the record of decision phase where it does not do anything for us? Thank you.
Well, it's not my area of expertise, but I think there are people who know what kinds of recourse you have, what the requirements are of the EIS, and what kinds of recourse communities have. As the other gentleman was saying, that military communities that have had base closings over the last several decades have had very important experience with that question of what are the economic consequences of sort of reversing that process of military growth and seeing what happens. And in reverse, military growth one could benefit by looking at some of those studies to see what they found. But the more general question of research, I think, is incredibly important. The University of Guam is a premier research institution in Asia Pacific, and it really has the resources in social science and economics and other fields to be able to say, you know what, you can't just make claims. You need to do the studies. You need to have evidence. You need to do very careful, controlled, systematic studies of each of these kinds of issues that you claim you understand. And I think this is true, again, in many other base communities, that wild claims get made by chambers of commerce or by base personnel. Sometimes, again, very interested claims that don't hold up under scrutiny. They're not research-based. They're more hopes and desires than they are the truth of the matter. So I think that's incredibly important to not accept in public discussion claims that don't have that kind of background. Okay, do we have another?
You briefly touched on the study that was done by the chambers, and I know we don't know what the methodology is. We do have a bill that was introduced by the Vice Speaker that will put out to the people the question whether they are in favor of having the military board up here in Guam, and earlier I know you had also talked about maybe structuring the questions so that then we would really be able to get the answers rather than just point blank. Do you think there should be a military buildup, yes or no? What are some of the questions maybe that you can kind of help us even prior to the public hearing, so that we may substitute, the bill then and craft the question better?
Yeah, I happened to bring that slide that I showed this morning just in case somebody wanted to talk about that as well. So let me just... what Dr. Wonpat is talking about is the concept of framing, which sociologists and anthropologists use to talk about how societies have cultural ideas and orientations and values that they use to orient to the world and to ask certain questions and not others, to see some things and see other things, not see other things. Right? So that framing of the question about military bases and military base growth are culturally specific, and we can say narrow. They're not the only possible questions to ask. And asking the wrong questions means you'll get the wrong answer. Right? So what I've noticed so far on Guam is that this is one of the important questions that's been framed. Should Guam Water Authority reduce dependency on Navy water by building new wells and so on? Another way to frame that question is, and this is another thought I've heard people express, which is, should the Navy charge the people of Guam to use the water of Fenno Lake? Right? Or should the water just come free? Another way to frame that question would be, should an upper limit be placed on the number of people who can live on Guam based on when water supplies would be unsustainably exploited? And yet another frame is, should the people living on Guam in 1944 or 1950 own the water of Fenno Lake? Right, so those are four very different questions about water, and each of them leads you to very different kinds of questions and very different kinds of research that you do to answer those questions. Right? In the first case, you'd simply say, okay, well, let's do the economics of that and let's go get some more money. Right? And then, but it would also potentially lead to, again, more unsustainable water use and all sorts of other potential problems. But in any case, these other questions maybe should be more into the mix. So I think there's a whole series of alternatives like that, other kinds of questions that could be asked. I'm sure there are other people in the audience who might have some other suggestions. I know that there's a lot of diversity of opinion, but if the only question that gets asked is the one that's the most popular with the most powerful people in a society, what benefits the largest number of people, or what benefits the people who have been disadvantaged or hurt in the past, would be those questions wouldn't get asked.
Okay, we have another question here.
I'd like to just go back on the economy. Thank you very much for the comments that you made. I think that's certainly very enlightening. But I wanted to ask you, do you have any information about how military buildup or militarization impacts on tourism? In Guam, tourism is one of our biggest